Alright, like I said, we're going to blast the red lantern here. This is my blasting cabinet. That's what these are called. Considered a blasting cabinet. I got this along with the parts washer from the same person. I think I got it for a pretty good deal. They were $100 for the parts washer and the blasting cabinet. So, when I got this, it worked. It came with sand. It has clay sand in it, which works pretty well. It creates a lot of dust, and when I first hooked it all up, it just had a filter, and the filter didn't let any of the dust out of the cabinet, so it would just kind of fill up with a big dust storm, kind of cloud, and you couldn't see what you were doing. So what I did is I hooked up a small shop vac, and that it's temporary, it's not hooked up permanent yet, but the shop vac pulls the dust out of the cabinet, and it creates a lot of suction. It does that pretty well. The gloves will completely stand up when I close the lid and turn the vacuum on. And what that does for me is it pulls all the dust out of the cabinet and allows me to be able to see what I'm doing. But before that little problem was solved, I had to solve the problem of this thing clogging. And what was happening was the gun was clogging with sand. And let me explain just a little bit about how these guns work. And I'll explain how I kind of compensated for maybe I'd consider a design flaw in the gun. I can do that real easy on the cardboard here. So, see if I can get this to make sense quickly. The way the gun is shaped, if you take a look at this, it's a T. Okay? A T. Alright, so that's pretty simple. It's a T shape. So if you look up here, we have the gun. Looks basically like that. And what happens is airflow, right, will travel over the top, right, through the straight part of the gun, down the barrel of the gun, if that's what you were going to call it or relate it to. When you pull the trigger, you're just letting air flow, all right, over this T, over the intersection here. And the intersection is what picks up the blasting media. All right, so this tube is going to have all of the particles of sand being pulled up like a siphon. It creates a vacuum, and that sucks the sand out of the pan in here. And what happens was they were just all kind of clumping together here at the intersection and clogging. So what I did was I took, this is the original pickup tube. I took a different tube that I had, and I pinched the end of it closed so it just restricts how much sand it can pick up. So the sand is constantly airborne and constantly flowing at a high velocity. It doesn't get to pile up at the corner that you would find right here. That is right here. So if you compare the two, this is, I think the design flaw is the diameter of the tube is larger than the diameter of this tubing here. So the flexible tubing inside diameter is obviously larger than the inside diameter of what it is clamped on. So what happens is the sand can hit and bounce off of this little step down here, stepping down from this diameter to this diameter. And that's the little junction that causes the clogging. So restricting the sand flow allows it to be less sand and, well, it's just less traffic, and it doesn't cause a little clog there. And that works pretty good. So this is energized, which is that the air compressor is energized, but this is not hooked up. As you can see, nothing happens. We're going to hook up the air to the gun and start blasting, and that'll be loud because I'll be running the vacuum, so I'm not going to be talking while that is running. Alright, that'll be in the next clip. Alright, so the air compressor. The sandblasting cabinet is ran by an air compressor, and originally I had a very small, Farm and Family Center brand air compressor that could not keep up. CFM was probably 3 or 4 at best, and The volume is really what matters with a blasting cabinet or a blasting booth. The airline. So what I did is, instead of coming out of this compressor and emptying this 21-gallon tank in a minute on that blasting cabinet, I have an auxiliary tank. So if you follow this temporarily hung line here around the doorway, I have my real compressor. This is the big bad compressor that I don't have yet. This tank, I forget, I think it's an 80-gallon tank. But I'm filling this tank and draining it with the line going to the blasting cabinet. And when I pressurize the 21 and the 80, pretty sure it's 80, that gives me 100 gallons of air. I have 100 gallons of air at 125 psi. It takes much longer to drop that since I have this large amount of volume. So I can run the blasting cabinet for a longer period of time. Now the plan is to buy a new pump that can keep up with filling. Typically, air compressors that are this size are like 14 to 20 CFM. This could run the blasting cabinet alone, just by itself.
Yeah.
But it has no pump or motor. So the idea with this is to save up and get a really great pump, probably a twin cylinder pump, and then get a large motor that'll probably run on 240 volts. I don't have a 240 plug in this shop space yet. I might, and once I find out I can get one installed here, I will
It's perfect.
get a motor to match it. And then this will be my one and only big bad air compressor.
Nice.
Right?
That's beautiful.
Alright, so now is when I'm going to turn the vacuum on, and it's going to get noisy, but we will show that the glove should perk up and totally fill up, which is pretty cool. And if it doesn't do that, I know the filter is clogged. If it does, then I know we're ready to go. So I close the lid. This seals pretty well, and then the suction will be pulled through the vacuum, should get these gloves up. So why don't you show inside the cabinet to see if those gloves do extend.
Whoa.
Alright, that's how I know I have good vacuum on the cabinet, and that's really the best that I can do to pull the little dust storm that happens inside the cabinet.
That'll be interesting.
Yep. And you should see it working. You should be able to see in the cabinet just like you can now while I'm blasting. I'm going to say this is all kind of self-contained, and we did lock down the lid, but it is sandblasting, so I am going to wear safety glasses. I have used
Safety.
I have used these. I've used these before where they're not perfectly sealed around the edges.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this one is either, but it is pretty good. And if they leak, the sand can bounce out, and it comes out at a pretty good speed, and it gets you in your eyes. That's a bad day. So, safety glasses are
Good
on,
advice.
and we will continue. You can pause that. Was blasting for about a minute and a half, and I got this far. And the deal with this is, with the sandblasting, as you can see, it turns a silver color. It is removing all the paint, any layers of any coatings of anything that are under the paint, and the oxidation, the rust is all removed.
Oh my gosh.
Now, it is being scratched in many different directions as the sand is being forced into the metal. It hits it and deflects off, and it scratches it when that happens. So it just kind of scratches it up and makes it a silver color. It doesn't polish it like a finer media.
So this was red before you put it in there?
Yeah, this is all red and rusty. You saw this before in a video and in some still pictures of this. It's not done. You can see some pinholes that may have been very thin, rusty areas that the sand blasted right through, which I'm not going to fix. I don't really care about those. I will paint it and everything, and it will be primed and painted and rust-free and coated for the future. But I'm going to leave the holes in it, any dents or any imperfections that it may have, because I think that gives it character.
Yeah.
It is an older lantern, and I should show its age in its appearance, but not in its function. And there's no reason that the paint can't be shiny.
That's true.
So I did blast under here as well. See a couple more pinholes, but all in all, I think it's turning out pretty well. And it's a good time to show you this because I noticed that the light just kicked on.
Yeah, you can see it's a sandstorm.
And I can still see what I'm doing. It's just enough to stay ahead of the dust.
Yeah.
And it is not perfect. You can see as soon as I stop, it all goes away. And I'll notice it'll start to slow down, and that's when I check the filter. But it's a little bit of a trade-off because the filter will help keep this room dust-free, but I do have to check it for being clogged. See, now it's nice and clear.